In a shocking development, multiple reports suggest that U.S. President Donald Trump has directed the Pentagon to draft plans for a military operation to seize the Panama Canal. This move, described by critics as a blatant act of imperialism, has sparked global concerns over U.S. interventionism, the erosion of Panama's sovereignty, and the potential for escalating tensions between Washington and Beijing. The plan is allegedly motivated by the need to counter growing Chinese influence in Panama and to secure a strategic asset that has historically been vital to American military and economic interests. The Panama Canal has long been a geopolitical chess piece in the struggle for global dominance. Constructed by the United States in the early 20th century and completed in 1914, it became one of the most significant infrastructure projects in modern history. The canal cut maritime travel times dramatically, allowing ships to avoid the treacherous route around South America's Cape Horn. For much of the 20th century, the canal remained under American control. However, after decades of Panamanian resistance and international pressure, President Jimmy Carter signed the Torrijos-Carter Treaties in 1977, which set the stage for the gradual transfer of the canal to Panama. By 1999, the U.S. formally handed over control of the canal to the Panamanian government, an event seen as a victory for national sovereignty in Latin America. Since then, the canal has been managed by the Panama Canal Authority, an independent agency of the Panama government. However, in recent years, the U.S. has raised concerns over China's increasing economic foothold in Panama, with state-backed Chinese companies securing major contracts related to canal logistics, ports, and infrastructure development. Reports indicate that Trump's reasoning behind the proposed military intervention is multifaceted. First, he argues that the U.S. made a strategic error in relinquishing control of the canal and must now rectify this by reasserting dominance. Second, the move is framed as a national security issue, with claims that China is leveraging its investments in Panama to exert influence over global shipping lanes. Trump has frequently expressed his opposition to what he calls the weak foreign policy of previous administrations, criticizing their decision to allow China to gain strategic leverage in the Western Hemisphere. In speeches and private discussions, he has reportedly referred to the canal as American-built and suggested that the U.S. has a right to protect it from foreign encroachment. While no official military action has been taken, yet insiders claim the Pentagon has been asked to prepare scenarios ranging from increased U.S. military presence in the region to full-scale intervention. Panama has strongly condemned any suggestion that the U.S. could reclaim the canal. The President has reaffirmed that the canal is Panamanian property and that any attempt to seize it would be met with fierce resistance. The Panamanian government has reached out to international bodies including the United Nations and the Organization of American States, seeking diplomatic support against U.S. intervention. On the other side, China has issued strong warnings against U.S. actions in Panama, stating that any interference with Chinese investments or commercial operations will be considered an act of aggression. Given China's vast economic presence in Latin America and its growing influence in global trade, a U.S. move on Panama could worsen U.S.-China relations, potentially leading to retaliatory measures. Many Latin American nations, which have long viewed U.S. military interventions in the region with suspicion, have expressed solidarity with Panama. Officials have issued statements reaffirming Panama's sovereignty and warning against any return to Cold War-era interventionism. While European nations have largely remained silent, the European Union has expressed concerns over potential disruptions to global trade if tensions escalate around the canal. NATO also has taken a cautious stance, as many member nations have economic ties to both the US and China. The Panama Canal is responsible for roughly 6% of global maritime trade, making it one of the most vital trade routes in the world. Any military conflict in the region could severely disrupt supply chains, leading to economic losses for businesses dependent on timely shipments. Moreover, if China perceives a U.S. intervention as a threat to its interests, it could impose trade restrictions on American companies, escalating a new economic Cold War between the two superpowers. If the U.S. deploys troops to Panama, it could trigger several military consequences, such as Panamanian resistance. While Panama lacks a standing army, Its national police and security forces could engage in guerrilla tactics, making any occupation costly. Secondly, there will be regional backlash. Other Latin American countries could increase military cooperation with China and Russia, shifting the balance of power in the region. Finally, there will be Chinese retaliation. While direct military engagement between China and the US is unlikely, Beijing could support Panama through intelligence sharing, cyber warfare, and economic retaliation. One of the most notable precedents for US intervention in Panama was the 1989 invasion, codenamed Operation Just Cause. The US military ousted Panamanian leader Manuel Noriega under the pretext of protecting American citizens, combating drug trafficking, and restoring democracy. The invasion led to significant casualties and long-term resentment toward US military involvement in the region. If Trump proceeds with military action, the consequences could be far worse, given the globalized nature of today's geopolitical environment and the presence of foreign powers such as China in the region. First of all, it is possible to expect a diplomatic resolution attempt. The US may use diplomatic pressure to limit China's involvement in Panama while stopping short of military action. Secondly, the Trump administration can impose economic sanctions. Washington could impose sanctions on Panama to push it away from Chinese influence. Third scenario is about a possible military occupation. A worst-case scenario would see US forces entering Panama, leading to international condemnation and prolonged conflict. Lastly, everybody thinks about a Chinese counteraction. Beijing could respond by strengthening ties with Latin American nations or imposing economic countermeasures against the US. Trump's proposal to reclaim the Panama Canal is a high-stakes gamble that risks destabilizing Latin America, worsening US-China relations, and triggering a global economic crisis. While the canal remains a crucial strategic asset, military intervention could backfire, leaving the US isolated diplomatically and entangled in a prolonged regional conflict. The world will be watching closely as the situation develops. Whether this is mere political posturing or a serious military plan, one thing is clear: any attempt to seize the canal will reshape global geopolitics for years to come. Moreover, competing with China through investments, trade agreements, and infrastructure partnerships could provide a more sustainable approach to maintaining influence. If the Trump administration proceeds with an aggressive strategy, it could face severe consequences, both regionally and globally, further exacerbating tensions with China and alienating key allies in Latin America. Rather than resorting to military aggression, the US may find more success in strengthening economic ties and diplomatic engagement with Panama and Latin America.